Oi, gente, bom dia. Eu sou a Andi Rubinstein, sou bonequeira, contadora de histórias e tô aqui abrindo essa série de lives que eu chamei de Vida de Bonequeiro, que eu tô conversando com os maiores bonequeiros do mundo, os grandes mestres bonequeiros que inspiraram. Tô nervosa, gente, que é a primeira vez que faço esse negócio, que inspiraram a minha vida, que inspiraram minha carreira, pessoas muito especiais. Obrigada a vocês que estão aqui assistindo ao vivo agora, obrigada a vocês que estão assistindo gravado. Hoje eu convidei, para começar nossa conversa, o Stefan Fichert. Ele é um bonequeiro da Alemanha. Eu tive a sorte de conhecê-lo quando eu tinha 23 anos, fui fazer o Caminho de Santiago, e ele, gente, ele é incrível. Então, eu vou contar para vocês que, trouxe aqui. Esse é um livro que eles escreveram quando eles comemoraram 25 anos de carreira. E ele é um grande artista, o Stefan. Depois a gente vai conversar com ele, ele já está aqui esperando. Eu vou mostrar aqui, eu tive a honra de ganhar de presente deles uns desenhos. Gente, esses são os desenhos que ele faz. Esse negócio aqui. Então, ele é... Enfim. Olha, eu estou muito feliz que vocês estão aqui. O Juan, obrigada, Juan, que você está aqui. Obrigada a todo mundo. Obrigada, gente, por fazerem parte disso. Obrigada por estarem aqui. E, bom, eu vou conversar com o Stefan em inglês. Eu só queria saber se tem alguém aqui que precisa, que não fala inglês e que quer ouvir a tradução direta em português. Escreve nos comentários, por favor, para eu saber. Senão a gente vai fazer essa conversa inteira em inglês e eu vou legendar depois. Se tiver alguém aqui que não entenda, por favor, escreve nos comentários, porque daí eu já vou traduzindo ao mesmo tempo. Escreve. Bom, se vocês não escreverem, eu não quero mais enrolar, então eu vou agora convidar aqui para entrar comigo o meu querido amigo, mestre Stefan Fichert, com vocês.
Hello.
Stefan,
lovely to see you again. You speak beautiful Portuguese.
Thank you. You got it all, right?
Wow. Right.
So I'm so happy to have you here, Stefan. I'm sorry, I'm just doing this so when we show the stuff, you are big and I'm small. I am so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting talking to me. We haven't seen each other in such a long time. You said it's been 18 years since we last met in person, so it's amazing for me to see you and to talk to you. And I want to start asking you, how did you begin your career? How did you decide to be a puppeteer? How did it happen? How was it?
Well, this is a long story, of course. It's not the classical story. I was not sort of set on puppetry from the beginning and thought this would be the thing I desperately wanted to do in life. I came across it by chance, really. And it so happened that while I was studying art in Munich, that was in the years around 66, 67, 1968, which I don't know whether this also has a meaning in Brazil, but it was the time of the student revolts in Europe and America, Vietnam War and all that. And there was a lot of things were going on, but what was not going on was tuition and art. So I was rather frustrated because what I wanted to do is to paint and not to join sit-ins or something like that. So I was frustrated then, and by chance I was together with a good friend whose cousin Suzanne had just returned from London, where she had studied and then started to work at the Little Angel Marionette Theatre. And we were in the car together and talking, and she just said, why don't you come to London if you're frustrated here in Munich? At this Little Angel, we are just doing a big production of Stravinsky's The Soldier's Tale, Royal Festival Hall, and it's a huge thing. And I'm sure they'll need people in the workshop, and why don't you just come along? And quite different to my sort of usual ways of doing things, I immediately said, yes, I'm going to do that. And so I joined Suzanne. She then telephoned the director of the theater, and he said, oh, well, I don't know, I mean, he has to come at his own risk, and I'm not sure, I don't know the bloke, and so on. So I came on my own risk, and I think neither me, of course, nor John Wright, who was the director, regretted that. And I started at the workshop. I was working at the workshop and enjoyed it very much. But even then, I wasn't, as I say, I was fascinated. It was a great thing. It was with live orchestra. It was huge puppets, life-size puppets, black theater technique.
You were building the puppets?
I was building puppets. I was mainly in the work, puppets, props. There were lots of things to be done. My masterpiece was a carriage which travels through the air.
Wow.
That was very on, yes, with devil's horses. Anyway, this was fantastic, but I didn't sort of think I would, carry on with this. I then stayed in London, stayed with Suzanne. We became partners. We, well, as you know, many years later, we married after our children were adult. But anyway, I sort of worked at the theater off and on, but I studied film. I was still looking for other things. And then sort of slowly, I more and more got into this till in the end, it was a thing we decided, Suzanne and myself, to do something of our own. So not just the Little Angel, and not doing for them and for their fantastic, but still artistic work, but doing our own thing. And this first thing we did was Inuk and the Sun, a play based on an Eskimo story by a Canadian writer whom we know. And at the same time, there was an exhibition at the Museum of Man, the Ethnological Museum, London, of Inuit art. And this was a fantastic exhibition. It was an eye-opener, and it inspired the work of the puppets, the design, and we did this show, and it was a big thing. And I don't know how we managed to get it all through, but we did. And we showed it at the Little Angel. It was a good success. It was many of the puppeteer friends of the scene there were impressed by it. Not so much John Wright and the Little Angel. They were very critical about it, but that was more because we sort of entered their territoire too closely, I suppose. But we remained very good friends. But that was really what then finally got me into puppetry. And from then on, I was still working in films, but I sort of did more and more till we, Suzanne and myself, decided, that was in 1975, to start our own company, which was the Puppet Players, then still called the London Puppet Players, but in the course of the years we dropped the London. So that's the story. And from there on, of course, well, there were many alleys we went down, and some were more successful than others, as usual.
Yeah. Should we show a few puppets from Inuk and the Sun, since you?
Well, you've got some. I sent you some, and as we said, some old dusty photographs of 1973, and I didn't spot them.
Yeah. Então, gente, eu vou mostrar umas fotos aqui que o Stefan me mandou. So, Stefan, so this is Inuk?
This is Inuk, and of what you see, two dogs, two sledge dogs, and it was a type of puppet which we did for the first time at the Little Angel, what we call rod marionettes. That's to say, they are operated like marionettes from above, but not on strings, on rods. And the rods are seen, they should be seen. And the difference to string puppets is, and the quality of rod puppets is this direct control you have. And we thought these figures, we saw films of Inuit, so documentary material. They move slowly in their big furs and with their harpoons over the ice and so on. So this is nothing for marionettes. Marionettes are the sort of dancing light figures, and we needed heavy stuff, earthbound or icebound, as it were. Then there is sculpture.
I'll just translate this because there are a few people who might not understand. Yeah. Okay, so just sorry. Então, gente, ele só tá falando uma coisa muito interessante, que esses primeiros bonecos que eles fizeram na peça que chamava Inuk e o Sol, que é inspirada num conto do... Gente, acabei de esquecer, acho que do Alaska. Is it from Alaska? No, where is it? Inuk and the Sun?
Well, from the north, yes, Alaska, or north of Canada, or Greenland. From the Arctic.
Right, sorry. So, então, do Ártico, do Polo Norte, assim, mais do Polo Norte, e eles estudaram muito essas imagens, essas figuras, e fizeram esse tipo de bonecos que tem essa vara. Vocês estão vendo aí que tem uma vara no corpo e uma vara em cima da cabeça, que é diferente de um marionete. O marionete é pendurado por fios e ficam mais dançantes, mais leves, e esses bonecos ficam mais estáveis, e você tem um controle maior do movimento. All right.
Yeah. And also the sculptural aspect, these are in a way things we sort of thought about then, and it accompanied us through our career in a way. And that was one thing, to show how things are done, not to try and hide it, and to have this sculptural aspect to the puppets, very much with the Eskimo, the Inuit ones, because they're these stone sculptures are very sort of rounded, but also not fur and cloth and stuff, but wood and carved wood and shape and color.
Uau! Então, ele está falando que esse foi uma coisa que eles escolheram na carreira deles, duas coisas muito importantes. Uma, de mostrar para o público o que eles estavam fazendo. Eles não queriam esconder que tinha mecanismos, esconder que eles estavam manipulando, isso estava tudo aparecendo. E também eles estavam menos interessados em fazer bonecos com tecido, com pelo, parecendo real. A ideia era entender qual que era aquela forma que estava por trás daquilo e traduzir isso direto com madeira, com coisas sólidas. Stefan, someone is saying that it seems that it's easier to manipulate this type of puppets than marionettes. Is it easier?
Well, it depends what you think, what you understand by easier. I mean, it is easier to hold such a puppet on stage, as it were, because it just stands and you only have to hold it. The movement is a more abstract movement. I mean, a marionette can walk easily if you do it, if you know how to do it. With these, you have to sort of walk the whole sculpture, and by using the swing of the legs, things like that. So in that sense, it's not easier. It's a different way of doing it. I wouldn't say it's easier to get across the idea.
Gente, esses bonecos, eles são talvez mais fáceis de segurar quando eles estão no palco do que um marionete, que é mais mole, mas você tem que ter o jeito de como que você vai segurar, como que você vai ir mexendo de um lado para o outro, porque também... Então, ele disse que não é mais fácil, mas é mais fácil só de segurar parado. Talvez só isso seja mais fácil. Okay, maybe I'll show. This is another puppet from the same.
Yes, this is the polar bear. And like polar bears, he can get up on his hind legs and stand like, you know. But,
então, esse é o urso polar, e como os ursos polares, ele consegue ficar em pé na parte de trás e levantar as... I think we have one more, right, from Inuk. This is the little angel.
Company. Yeah, that's just the Inuk and the sun. The company, you see, in the front, you see Suzanne and myself with our baby Jakob, who was born by then. And in the back, there are various puppeteers. The second one from the right is George Spade. And George Spade is not only he doesn't live anymore, quite a well-known scholar of puppetry in the English world, in the British world. But also he was a co-founder of the Puppet Players. The three of us founded the company.
Então, aí embaixo nessa foto vocês estão vendo o Stefan e a Suzana abaixados com o bebezinho deles, o Jakob, que tinha nascido, e vários bonequeiros, e esse que está em pé de gravata, de terno e gravata, é o George Spade, que foi um dos fundadores dos Puppet Players com eles, com o Stefan e a Suzanne. Did you found it in London? You were still in London when you founded the Puppet Players?
Yes, we were still in London, but on the brink of leaving London. We then, a year later, in 1976, we went back to Germany, to Gauting, Munich. And we settled there. That had various reasons. I won't go into that now because then we won't ever get anywhere.
Então, eles começaram a carreira deles em Londres, no Little Angel Theatre, que é um teatro que existe até hoje em Londres, um teatro de bonecos, e depois eles foram para a Alemanha e ficaram na Alemanha. Should we,
yeah, well, that's the theatre.
Esse é o teatro. So it's still there, right?
It's still there, yes. It still looks the same, more or less.
Então, ainda está lá e ainda é mais ou menos parecido. Quem for para Londres pode visitar. Gente, é um teatro incrível, esse Little Angel Theatre.
Well, that's the last one. That's the door of the workshop. I'm pointing at it, but nobody sees it. The face you see, the human face you see, is Lindy Wright. Lindy Wright, the wife of John Wright, the founder of the Little Angel, and the main designer of the theatre. And she's still about, and she's still very active, and she's still in the workshop, just like you see her. She's well over 80 now, but we've worked together actually fairly recently, in this workshop.
Então, essa moça que vocês estão vendo aí, essa é a janela do workshop, do lugar onde eles faziam os bonecos, que ainda está lá. Essa é a Lindy Wright, é a mulher do John Wright, que foi o fundador do Little Angel Theatre, e ela ainda está viva, ela tem 80 e muitos anos, e diz que ele trabalhou com ela recentemente, de novo. Eles ainda trabalham juntos, de vez em quando. Okay.
No, let's move on.
Let's move on. So I asked you about your childhood. If you could tell us a little bit of the role art played in your childhood, if it influenced you and how it was.
Yes, it definitely did. It played a great role in my childhood. From the beginning, my parents were very art orientated, and both of them had studied art in some way. My father was what you would now call a designer, textile designer. My mother then was working in another thing, but she had studied art in Paris. And it was from the beginning I can remember anyway, I was given paint, and I was given, not sort of little bits, but big pots of paint and big sheets of paper. And I could just paint big paintings before, even long before I went to school. So that was a very sort of strong influence on my further development. I was then a little sort of frustrated at school. I remember very well the first day at school, and there was one of the tasks we were given. In those days, we had slates, not paper, but slates with sort of colored, I don't know what you call them, pencils to draw on. And the teacher said, now fill your slate with circles, with colored circles. I thought it's a great idea, and I did colored circles all over the place and enjoyed it. And then after I'd finished, I sort of looked around, and all the others had sort of done nice, patterns and stuff. And I sort of felt very bad about my sort of wild drawing. But so that was a kind of cultural shock to
go to school. But
the teacher was all right, actually, and he did not scold me because I didn't. So anyway, but then from then on, it's still, drawing, painting was a strong, big part of my life. And in school later on, it became, I suppose from my early teens on, I was going to be a painter. That was quite clear.
Então, gente, olha só, ele disse que a arte teve um papel muito importante na vida dele quando ele era criança, que os pais dele eram artistas, o pai dele era um designer têxtil e a mãe tinha estudado arte em Paris, e que eles deram tintas e papéis para ele desde que ele era muito pequeno, e que ele começou a pintar. Antes de ir para a escola, ele já pintava, e ele até contou uma história que quando ele foi para a escola, o professor falou para eles desenharem círculos coloridos, e ele achou aquela ideia ótima e começou a desenhar uns círculos enormes coloridos de várias cores na folha inteira, e quando ele olhou para os colegas, eles tinham desenhado uns círculozinhos bem pequenininhos, todos certinhos, todos organizadinhos, e ele ficou assim, será que ele tinha feito errado? Mas que o professor falou que o professor foi legal, o professor não deu uma bronca por ele ter feito círculos todos gigantes, coloridos, e ele nos começo da juventude, quando ele tinha uns 12, 13, no começo ele já tinha decidido que ele queria ser pintor.
Círculos coloridos.
Círculos coloridos. So the next photograph we have here is from a shadow. A próxima foto que a gente tem aqui é de um teatro de sombras. Can I show it? Okay. Aqui.
Yes. Shadow has been... Sorry.
I just want to say something. Eu queria falar para vocês que o Stefan tem essa coisa, como ele veio de uma carreira de pintor. Ele sempre foi pintor. A pintura e a escultura, assim, a figura é muito importante na obra dele. Vocês podem ver. Agora ele vai falar sobre o teatro de sombras, como ele faz. Mas olhem isso, é uma pintura essa cena de teatro de sombras. Sorry, go on.
No, fine. Yes.
I was just saying that because you began your career as a painter, and we can see in your puppetry, like, this is a painting. It's not, sure. It's not just a shadow. It's a painting in itself.
Yes. But exactly, that's the point about shadow theater. It is a bit like painting. I mean, it's somewhere, or the way we have treated, Susanne and myself have treated shadow always as big as a theater of paintings, of pictures, rather than a theater just of silhouettes that move. And they're big, actually. I mean, what you see here is a big screen. It's like 4 meters wide and 2 meters high or something like that.
Ok, I will translate that, porque é incrível, gente. Eles sempre trataram ele e a esposa, o teatro de sombras, como realmente uma pintura, não só uma série de silhuetas se movendo. Vocês podem ver. E isso aqui tem 4 metros de largura por uns 2 metros de altura. Então, vocês podem imaginar que é uma pintura gigante. And was it accompanied by orchestra? How was...
Yes, usually that's actually all of our shadow shows had live music, and that's how we started. We actually started our first big shadow show was The Soldier's Tale, funnily enough, the same thing, which was the first piece I came across in London then, The Soldier's Tale, and we did it with soloists from the Munich Philharmonic Orchestra, and it takes 8 musicians, so it's a big thing. And they need to be very good, because the Stravinsky music is very difficult to play. So we had musicians and we had narrators. That's to say, we started with 3 narrators, and then we ended up with 1, which was much better. It's a wonderful narrator who told the story, who spoke. I don't know if it's a fairy tale, The Soldier's Tale. So that was the kind of frame we always used. On the one side, there were, like, if you look at it from the front, on the left-hand side, there was the orchestra, all the musicians. On the right-hand side, there was the narrator, visible to the audience. And in
então,
the middle
esse foi o jeito como eles sempre trabalharam, de ter com orquestra, de ter, então, uma orquestra tocando. Esse primeiro espetáculo que eles fizeram, o Conto do Soldado, que é com a música do Stravinsky, precisava de 8 músicos, tinha 8 músicos tocando, e tinha também um narrador. Eles sempre trabalharam assim, do lado esquerdo a orquestra tocando, do lado direito o narrador, e no centro acontecendo praticamente essa pintura. And this shadow show, which
this
one?
This is part of the fairy tale, The Chinese Nightingale. It's a fairy tale by Andersen.
Essa é o conto do Andersen, o Rouxinol.
And it was actually a commissioned composition by a composer lived in East Berlin. He unfortunately has died just a year or 2 ago. And the nice thing about this is, and that's a very musical idea, with the Chinese Nightingale, it is a kind of, how do you call it? I can't think of the word now. It's like 2 elements. The natural nightingale that sings beautifully, natural, is wonderful. And the emperor, the Chinese emperor, hears about this, and it's so wonderful. So he asks his servants to look out for the nightingale and catch it for him, and put the nightingale into a cage. And that he does, but in the end, the nightingale doesn't sing and it escapes. But there comes somebody who says, I can build a mechanical nightingale. It's just as beautiful. So he builds a mechanical nightingale, and it sings just as beautifully. A little different, though. And that was the musical idea, that we had the natural nightingale, which was a flute, and the artificial nightingale, which was electronic sound. And so these 2 were juxtaposed in the play, and that sort of was a musical equivalent to the story, which was interesting. And yeah, it was fun.
Uau, nossa. Então, gente, nesse espetáculo, que era o Rouxinol do Andersen, baseado no conto do Andersen, o Rouxinol, que tem um imperador que ouve falar do canto do Rouxinol e manda capturar um Rouxinol e prende numa gaiola. E quando o Rouxinol está preso numa gaiola, ele para de cantar. Então, eles têm que soltar o Rouxinol, mas tem um artista que diz que vai construir um rouxinol mecânico que vai cantar igualmente bem. E lógico que o rouxinol maravilhoso, feito, não canta como um pássaro de verdade. E na peça eles tinham isso de ter a flauta, era o rouxinol, era o som do rouxinol verdadeiro, e tinha uma música eletrônica que era esse rouxinol artificial que era criado depois. Great.
Yes, you explain that much better than I do.
No, I try to make it short. I'm not sure. A lot of people. And Stefan, how are these paintings on chat? How did you make this? Can you tell us?
No, they're very. I mean, in this one, I don't know whether I sent you any more photos. What you see, part of it is a projection. And for instance, what you see here, this sort of tree thing, is actually an autumn leaf, a sort of deteriorated autumn leaf projected by a special projector which we use, which has a very wide angle lens. So it's a huge enlargement of a very small thing.
So I will translate that. Então, isso aqui, gente, essa coisa que vocês estão vendo que parece meio que uma árvore, na verdade é uma folha de outono, dessas já desfeitas, projetada num projetor que amplia muitíssimas vezes. Então, é uma coisa bem pequena, projetada enorme na tela.
And in the light, in the projected light, we operate the figures. I mean, like this one, this silhouette of a fisherman in the boat, you can actually see that is the rod, and you actually see the control down here.
Tá vendo? Acho que dá para vocês verem uma coisa quase transparente embaixo do barco, que é o controle, a vara, uma vara de acetato transparente que controla o barco e o barqueiro. Is it an overhead projector or is it something else?
No, it's a slide projector. It's a kind of slide, professional slide projectors.
É tipo projetor de slides profissional que eles usam para fazer essa projeção. It's great. Okay, I'll move to the next picture and we'll see. A surprise. Oh, surprise. Okay. So I'll just make an introduction to this. Okay? Quando eu conheci o Stefan e a Suzane, eles estavam trabalhando nesse espetáculo, que era com bonecos feitos com instrumentos musicais. E é uma coisa incrível. Agora, vamos ler. Gente, a Paula, eu vou até falar o que você falou para ele. Stefan, Paula, who's watching us, just said, "Oh, this is beautiful. I'm amazed just to imagine a flute playing to that painting. Like, it's amazing." É verdade, Paula. Era amazing. But now, can you tell us about these musical puppet instruments?
Right.
And Stefan, let's do this. You speak a little bit, and then I translate because I think all this is so. Okay, great.
Okay. To start this idea of doing musical puppets, that's to say puppets that are like musical instruments producing their own sound, their own language, right?
Essa foi a ideia de criar bonecos que falassem uma própria língua. E a língua que eles iam falar era a língua da música. Então, eles eram bonecos e instrumentos musicais ao mesmo tempo.
Right. And I had this idea for a long time. I mean, this then happened in 1992 or something like that. But I had thought about this a long time, and I was inspired by musical instruments in the Munich Municipal Museum, which came from Africa.
Ele já tinha pensado nisso há muito tempo, e ele foi inspirado no Museu de Munique de Instrumentos Musicais, nos instrumentos africanos. E só em 92, 93 que eles começaram a fazer, de fato, esses bonecos.
Right. And this came about in the framework of the Munich Biennale. The Munich Biennale is a festival of contemporary music theater, which was founded by composer Henze, quite a very well-known composer, and he got us in to supervise a puppet project. He wanted to be part of this Biennale, which was big stuff, big stage, music theater, a small stage with small, in brackets, operas without words, performed by puppets, directed by young directors, composed by young composers, and all being commissioned for this purpose. And so we got... Okay, you
so,
just...
I'm sorry. Então, isso foi parte da Bienal de Munique. Eles foram contratados para dirigir, para cuidar dessa parte de pequenas óperas de bonecos que iam acontecer na Bienal de Munique, com jovens diretores de ópera, jovens compositores. Então, era toda uma coisa de contemporânea, de criação autoral na Bienal, que a Bienal era uma coisa bem grande. It was the music Bienal?
Yes, music theater, contemporary music theater.
Teatro contemporâneo
not opera,
musical.
but music theater, because it was a wider sort of range.
Okay. Então não era só ópera, mas era o teatro musical mais abrangente.
Right.
And how was it to build these puppets?
Well, it was fun. I mean, it was... Well, it started like this. I mean, when we finally we applied to the Biennale to do this production, and it was granted, and we got the money for it, and so on. But we started then just thinking what could be done, and we did lots of experiments. We had a composer then with him together. We and the students of this project, and I knocked up all sorts of things and materials, and we went to sort of waste metal places and so on, and got material in and tried things out, and what would work and what would not work. And so I ended up with a number of possibilities, and this is one of them. It is the percussion. Okay, that's a very sort of macho kind of thing. They're all percussion instruments.
Então eles foram procurando, pesquisando instrumentos e outras coisas que faziam sons e testando várias possibilidades até eles chegarem nessa. Eram os homens, que eram uma coisa mais macho, assim, esse som mais forte. Stefan, did you have musicians help you?
Yes. Yes, we actually worked very closely with the composer. That's to say, the score was written while we were working. It was sort of hand in hand.
Muito junto com o compositor, e a trilha sonora foi composta enquanto eles estavam fazendo o espetáculo. I'm going to show the next one because it's...
Right. There you get to what you probably don't see. This is a string instrument. The story is the story of Lysistrata, the Aristophanes story, the old Greek story. Lysistrata, I don't know. I mean, the basic idea of this story is that there's a war going on between Athens and Sparta or something, and the women want to end the war, and they refuse themselves to their men, and that causes, of course, a great many problems, and in the end they actually give in, and so the war is finished.
Então, a história é que essa Lysistrata, a peça do Aristófanes, grega, que tá tendo uma guerra entre Atenas e Esparta, e as mulheres querem que acabe a guerra, então elas fazem uma greve de sexo, elas se recusam a se deitar com seus maridos, e depois de um tempo elas vencem, e eles terminam a guerra. Essa é a história dessa peça.
That's the story. And then what you see is you have the man, which is a big drum, and it's bum, 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 bum. And the women...
O homem é esse tambor, esse grande tambor. Uhum.
And the women, they're more complicated. The bottom, the sort of belly part, is a string instrument. There are 3 strings. and they strike a chord. It's like a hurdy-gurdy. It's turning this disc. And there's, I'm watching it makes no sense.
Então, gente, é incrível. Essa parte de baixo é como se fosse um instrumento de corda e vai girando. Então, tem 3 cordas de violino, e quando gira essa, tipo uma rodela que tem aí embaixo do corpo da mulher, toca o som.
And then there's more to it. They have, of course, the thing, it's without words, you know, it is theater without words. So we had to tell the story only by the gestures and the sounds of the puppets. And you see the little body, this little small body in a couple of shells. And the shells open and close, and that's, of course, a very obvious sign.
Então vocês podem ver que esse corpinho da mulher dentro de uma concha também abre e fecha. Também tem essa surpresa na hora que o corpo abre, aparece o corpo dela.
But that also does a sound. It's like castanhettes, you know, jump, 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 jump.
E também faz um som como se fosse castanholas. Gente, esse é um espetáculo sem palavras. Eles contam a história com a música e com esses sons.
And then on top of this, you see these sort of earring type things. They are rattles, and they shake their heads, you know, say no.
Então também, essas coisas que parecem uns brincos da mulher, também são uns tamborzinhos, aqueles que faz brrr. Então elas sacodem a cabeça para falar não, e o tamborzinho bate. Como vocês podem ver, parece que as mulheres são sempre mais complicadas que os homens. It seems like women are always more complicated than men.
Of course. And we actually, I mean, at the Biennale, we did it with 3 percussionists. It was an absolutely huge thing. You know, each of them has about 100 instruments. But afterwards, and when we did our own touring version, we only had 1 musician, and that was an accordion, whom you know, Maria. And we actually took this show to Brazil.
Yes, that's right. So, esse espetáculo, quando eles fizeram na Bienal a primeira vez, tinha 3 percussionistas, era uma coisa grandiosa, mas depois eles fizeram uma versão para viajar, que tinha só uma instrumentista, que era a Maria, que toca acordeon, e eles trouxeram esse espetáculo para o Brasil. Esse espetáculo, que eu sempre conto a história, que eu estava na casa deles e chegou um fax convidando eles para virem para o Brasil, e era com esse espetáculo. No, I'm just saying that I always remember that I was at your place in Munich and you received a fax in Portuguese inviting you to come to Brazil, and I was there, and I called, and that's how I got in touch with Berenice in São Paulo, and it's like a crazy, amazing story. So Stefan, I think it would be a great time now. We're 46-minute live already. Can you show us the Gente, eu tô pedindo para ele mostrar, because,
I've got, as I told you, Andi, we can't do it in the workshop because I don't have internet there, but I took a couple of puppet samples from another show, another production, also using sounding puppets. And this production consisted of short scenes based on aphorisms by a German philosopher of the 18th century, Lichtenberg, and it was there was a score written for it by a composer. Again, it was accompanied by accordion as a sort of bracket, and the puppets had their own sounds. Now, the 2 puppets I'm going to show are a kind of wind instruments. They actually produce.
Just one second, sorry. Então, ele falou que ele não pode fazer no workshop onde ele trabalha, porque lá não tem internet, então por isso ele veio fazer aqui na casa dele, e ele trouxe esses 2 bonecos e depois mais um que ele vai mostrar, tá? Ele trouxe 2 bonecos para mostrar e esses são bonecos sonoros também. Eles são bonecos que operam com o vento, como se fosse uma sanfona mesmo, com o ar que passa dentro. Ele vai mostrar agora pra gente. E eles foram feitos numa peça que tinha aforismos de um poeta alemão chamado Lichtenberg. Lichtenberg. Gente, agora atenção, essa parte. Peraí, eu só preciso. How's that?
Okay, so they're very simple figures. Again, they are in a kind of rod marionettes. They're operated by rods here. And the sounds they produce are very basic, but I start with this one here. But in the end, they uncover their faces, and behind, get stuck, they're the vast grimaces. And then it's all a big cacophony. There are 6 of them, you know, all sorts of sounds. Okay, that's...
Everyone is saying, wow, wonderful, that's awesome. That's so great. Gente, vocês que estão assistindo, se tiver alguma pergunta, ela é incrível, né? Realmente incrível. Eu acho ela incrível. E se vocês tiverem alguma pergunta, façam aí, tá? People are just saying it's wonderful, fantastic. Thank you. It's great. I'm so glad you could show, because it's so different to see a picture than to actually see them working.
Yes, and hear them with their awful
and
sounds.
Hear them. Paula, who's watching us, she's saying, I'm already seeing my musical instruments with different eyes. So I guess it's...
Yes, okay. So that was a sample.
Yeah, awesome. So, Stefan, since do you want to show the other puppets also? Because I think it would be nice.
All right, okay, I show them. I want to say a few words before I show them.
Yes, okay. So I will translate as you go. So I think this is working better, okay?
Now, the puppets I'm going to show are hand puppets, glove puppets.
Então, agora ele vai mostrar bonecos de luva, de mão, operados com a mão.
And so it's a very traditional form of puppetry. And what interested me was both the tradition and then to ask, what can we do with this tradition today, and how can we actually sort of take it back to the roots and do something new with them?
O que me interessou nesse trabalho com esses bonecos que são tradicionais era como que eu posso olhar para a tradição e ver o que é tradicional e, ao mesmo tempo, trazer o que eu tenho de moderno, de contemporâneo, qual é a minha visão disso.
So what you usually have with a glove puppet, you put it on your hand, there's a head, and there are 2 hands, right? And they do something like this, like your Punch and Judy or whatever. So we said we are not going to hide anything. Again, we are using a glove. We start with a glove, just a glove, and we put a head on the glove. And I show you a puppet.
Esses bonecos, então, os fantoches, a gente chama de fantoche em português, mas também pode ser chamado de boneco de luva. Então ele falou, a gente não quer esconder nada. A gente opera o boneco assim, com a mão. Então a gente vai usar uma luva. E agora eu vou mostrar, vou pôr maior aqui para vocês verem.
Okay, now these are 2 gloves, as you can see. They are leather gloves.
Essas são 2 luvas de cor.
They use them for welding, heavy leather gloves. So we took 2 of them and put a head on top. And the head, I'm trying, it's difficult to do it on oneself, but I'll try. Hope it doesn't fall down. And here it is.
Oh, e a cabeça encaixa assim, ó.
Right? And that's the sort of soldier.
E esse é o soldado. A polícia.
It's very kind of, yes.
Ele é assim.
And, of course, policeman, the whole thing is the story of the nose by Gogol. It plays in Russia, sort of 18th century Russia. And in Russia in the 18th century, and I guess not only then, police officers wanted to be bribed. And this one...
Então, gente, isso é a história O Nariz do Gol, e acontecia na Rússia. Então, qual é a história com os policiais? Eles sempre queriam ser... Ai, gente, como fala? Bribed? Esqueci a palavra. Você dá dinheiro.
No, I want to be paid, right? I want to be paid. And in order to be paid, we use the head.
Ah, e olha, para receber o dinheiro, eles usavam a cabeça, ó, que é um cofre a cabeça. Olha isso, gente.
So I can't do this because there would be another puppet, drops in a coin, and then he goes up and tries it out and says, oh, that's not enough. Come on, pay more. And so it goes on and on till his head is full of coins, and in the end, he's all right, and he says, okay, and he walks off. Okay, that's not the story, but it just shows the puppet, the glove and the head.
Então, gente, só para vocês verem a lógica, como é que era. Então, quando ele ia receber o dinheiro, ele não pode fazer isso porque seria outro bonequeiro, mas colocavam moedas dentro da cabeça e ele queria mais dinheiro, e aí ele chacoalhava a cabeça e iam colocando mais moedas.
Now, I'll show you another one. That's the only other one I have here. It is, again, a glove with a head. There it is.
De novo, uma luva com uma cabeça e nariz bem comprido.
So it's just a glove with a couple of buttons on it. And actually, for doing things, they had another glove like this, and it could do things like this, you know.
Então para fazer as coisas ele tinha uma outra luva como essa e a outra mão podia fazer as coisas.
Now this one is one of the main characters of the play is the barber. What's his name? No, come on.
Esse é dos personagens principais do espetáculo, é o barbeiro, que ele não está lembrando lá.
Just can't think of his name. Yakovlevich, sorry, Yakovlevich.
Yakovlevich é o nome dele.
He, again, it's a head and a glove, and all the heads are hollow. They're wooden heads, and they're hollow, and they all have a kind of function. And this one, I'll show you the function. I must be very careful not to mess up my computer.
Wait, let me just translate before you show. Gente, todos os bonecos tinham a cabeça oca e acontecia alguma coisa. Gente, atenção que ele vai mostrar, que ele falou que ele tem que tomar cuidado para não sujar a casa dele inteira. Mas, you can. Isso é amazing.
As I said, this is a barber and he cuts beards, okay? That's part
Esse
of
é o barbeiro e ele faz a barba das pessoas.
So what happens is then he has his client whom to cut the beard, and he produces. Now let's see.
Ele tem o cliente que.
Hang on.
Espera só um pouquinho.
So it is the barber scum, okay? And then
ele produz ele produz a espuma de barbear, aí ele tira isso da cabeça. Can you just put this closer to the camera? Tem a espuma de barbear, tá vendo, gente? Oh my God. Wow. It's awesome.
It's quite nasty. It smells.
Faz bastante sujeira.
And I have to put in a bucket. I know we had this as a demonstration on a TV film we did in a TV studio. I mean, a sort of portrait of us. And I shoved this puppet and I pressed too hard on the thing, and it went off the head and all over the studio. It was all messed up.
Ele falou que uma vez ele fez isso num estúdio de TV e apertou muito forte. Ele tem que guardar dentro do balde para não sujar a casa dele inteira. Stefan, everyone's saying he's a genius. And Tanya here said, and it looks like the brain. It looks a bit like a brain.
Yes. Well, they all had different things. I mean, the barber obviously had this open with a scum coming out. His wife had her cleaning towel in there, and she pulled it out and cleaned and put it back. The servant had a broom, and he pulled out the broom and cleaned the place. So we just sort of took it very much by the function of the head. The head represents the sort of basic symbol of the character.
Não, gente, olha isso, que incrível. Cada cabeça tinha uma coisa que eles pensavam qual era a função daquele personagem. Então a mulher tinha o pano de limpeza na cabeça, então ela tirava o pano da cabeça e ia limpando as coisas. Cada um tinha uma coisa, o outro tinha um esfregão. Cada um tinha uma coisa que tinha a ver com a sua profissão, a ver com o seu trabalho, e isso aparecia lá. This is so amazing.
There
Stefan,
are actually
there
are a couple of photos of the show I've sent you. I don't know whether there's a girl and in the cathedral, the puppets.
I think I don't have them right here to show them.
Forget.
So I think because I mean, we can stay longer, there's no limit, but I think people are watching. And let's go a bit through the other photographs. They're so amazing. And here they go.
Do you want me to say something?
If you want.
Well, just a couple of words. That's a show, actually, Andi, which you know very well. Sisyphos, a shadow dance theater.
Esse é um espetáculo de sombra com dança. Então, como vocês podem ver, aqui tinha um dançarino em cena que contracenava com as sombras.
Yes, it's the story of Sisyphos. And there we experimented in a way similar to what we usually do with shadows. Again, it was a big screen, but it was a mobile screen. It could be moved and become part of the show. And there was, again, a musician, our accordionist, Maria, and a narrator, an actor who sat on a kind of sort of high stool like they have on tennis courts, on a sort of referee stool. And there was the dancer, a butô dancer.
Então, nesse espetáculo tinha um dançarino de butô, um narrador, que era um ator, que ficava sentado tipo numa cadeirinha de juiz de jogo de tênis, e a acordeonista, e o Stefan fazendo os bonecos. Eu tive a maior honra que eu fui assistente dele nesse espetáculo. Eu fiquei 2 meses na Alemanha trabalhando com ele na criação desse espetáculo. Por isso que eu quis pôr aqui. I think we'll go a little faster now.
Yes. Opera.
Isso foi na opera. This would be nice if you could tell us a little bit of your work in the opera.
Well, it was very different things. It was an amazing experience, I must say, because there was the biggest form of theater meeting the smallest form of theater, puppetry and opera. This is what you see are the heads of puppets for a Faustus production, the opera by Gounod, on the big stage. I mean, huge Munich, the Bavarian State Opera House with huge orchestra, absolutely amazing, fantastic singers, we had as Faust.
Então, gente, isso é que ele falou uma coisa tão linda, que foi a maior forma de teatro, né? Assim, a mais suntuosa, que é a ópera, encontrando a menor forma de teatro, que é o teatro de bonecos. Foi um encontro entre esses dois. Eles tiveram a oportunidade de fazer os bonecos para a Ópera de Munique, produções gigantescas lá no teatro da Ópera de Munique. E esses são os bonecos da ópera Fausto, de Gounod. Tem umas cabeças aqui, e esse que vocês podem ver é o Stefan, e essa é a Suzanne, esposa dele.
That's one of the puppets, the devil.
Esse
Mephisto.
é um dos bonecos, o Mephisto. Wow.
In rehearsal.
Sorry,
That's okay. It's also opera. This I made for a production of Wagner's Ring, the Ring opera. It's 4 pieces, 5 hours.
It's the Nibelung.
Yeah, Ring des Nibelungen.
O Anel dos Nibelungos, essa daqui, ele fez para essa peça, ópera do Wagner.
And that's a horse, as you can see, which is the stallion of Brunhilde. And the director, very fantastic opera and stage director, Dieter Dorn, we experimented. He wanted, in the end, to have the stallion of the big, powerful Brunhilde to be small, to be carried by her like a pet. And so these horses are not very big. They're big as puppets go, but they're very far from life size. But they're very intricate, and of course they were operated by operators who accompanied the singer with rods, and they had very intricate movements. You can see, they're all jointed, and so once you move the leg, the hoof does this, and very complicated. So
então, eles são bonecos muito complicados. O diretor da ópera queria que o cavalo dessa personagem que é tão poderosa virasse pequenininho e ela pudesse carregá-lo. Então, eles não são muito grandes, sendo uma pessoa pode carregá-lo. Mas eles têm mecanismos muito complicados. Dá para ver que ele se mexe muito bem. And was there a puppeteer operating the?
Yes. And I coached the puppeteers, and it was actually taken up last year again for a run, because that's about 5 years ago at the Geneva Opera, that was in Switzerland, in Geneva, and it was taken up again last year, and I spent, 3-4 days there to coach the new operators. This wasn't easy, because although they were very good, they were very sort of physical actors, as it were. They were not puppeteers, and so it had limits to what one could ask them to do.
Ele está falando que isso é de uns 5 anos atrás, mas que o ano passado aconteceu. Passado não, deve ser retrasado. Aconteceu de novo na Ópera de Geneva, e ele treinou os bonequeiros para manipular esses bonecos. E ele falou que eles eram bons atores, mas não eram bonequeiros, então tinha um limite do quanto eles conseguiam fazer, apesar de eles serem muito bons de teatro físico.
Well, this again, it was a musical, actually, a musical production of Don Camillo and Pepone, again in Switzerland, actually, in St. Gallen.
Isso era uma produção musical de Dom Camillo e Pepone, na Suíça. I find this amazing.
It's a dog. What probably is interesting, and I was very glad that the director agreed with that, because I like to show how the thing is made, the material aspect of it, not to hide it and give it furs and stuff, but actually to see construction and get the magic out of the movement rather than from a sort of, you know, as if it looks like a dog, because it isn't. It's a piece of wood.
Então, ele gosta disso, gente, de mostrar o que está por trás, o que está embaixo, o mecanismo, e a magia vem do movimento, e não de parecer que é um cachorro de verdade, porque todo mundo sabe que não é, mas mesmo a gente sabendo que não é, a gente vê a movimentação e se encanta com a movimentação.
Yes. The problem, yeah, that's what it. That would be a good sort of final picture, wouldn't it?
Perfect.
Yes. Well, as you can see, I mean, they're very big. They're actually measured from top
eles são
to
enormes. How big are they?
Well, I mean, including the lance, they're 5 meters 70 from the floor.
Olha, eles têm 5,70 metros do chão até o topo da lança. São muito grandes.
And they're very light. They're made from cane. It's a cane structure. And cane is a very light material. And it's also what you don't see, but it's just covered in a kind of netting, which catches the light, but lets the air through, the wind, because it was for an open air production of an opera, of the Magic Flute.
Eles são muito leves, eles são feitos de um material muito leve, tem tipo só uma rede que reveste de um material que pega a luz, mas que deixa o ar passar, e eles foram para a flauta mágica, uma coisa ao ar livre da flauta mágica.
And it's actually, right now I'm building well, it's not a puppet, as it were. It's more like a costume for a phoenix figure, phoenix who rises from the ashes, for a theater on stilts. So it's a kind of stilt figure, and the same. I can't do this on my own, of course. I mean, you need help. And the colleague I've made these with, again, is working on Phoenix right now. So actually, right now we are at the workshop doing Phoenix, not quite as big as that, but still a similar technique. And so
então agora eles estão construindo uma fênix que renasce das cinzas, e também para uma produção bem grande. Ele nem consegue fazer sozinho, tem uma pessoa que está fazendo junto com ele. E I just want this. Okay. I think we'll Stefan, I think the last thing I want to show people before you leave is these two this. Então, eu queria mostrar para vocês isso, que é como ele trabalha. If you could just like to finish up, just tell us a little bit how you work from the.
Okay, I mean, this again, as you might be able to see, is Lysistrata. It's a storyboard, and I usually I start with a storyboard. That's to say, I try to imagine the play in images.
Então ele começa com storyboard, ele tenta imaginar a peça com imagens, como vocês estão vendo aí.
And in a way, it is a way of articulating ideas. And I very often find that most of the ideas which are later then translated into puppets and onto the stage have been already articulated in these drawings. I mean, you can see, for instance, here you see the shells. You see this is a percussion thing. The phalluses is a different story, but that's also in the show. So many of these things, this is a rattle, have already been.
De articular as ideias antes de construir. Né, várias das ideias que depois vão ser construídas aparecem aí nas imagens primeiro. Show another one.
Here we go. That is Sisyphus, and you might remember the photograph with the dancer and the curtain, and that was the drawing. I mean, the drawing was done a year before we actually rehearsed it, but that was the kind of idea. And in a way, it has been taken up then in the
Então, olha só, I think I'll try to look for the photograph, the other one. Esse, gente, era o desenho do Sísifos que ele mostrou antes, e eu queria mostrar para vocês. Deixa eu ver se consigo voltar aqui para vocês verem que aquele desenho ele desenhou 1 ano antes, e esse isso era na peça, o dançarino com esse pano que era a tela da sombra, ele usava para dançar. Aqui, ele tinha desenhado 1 ano antes, mais ou menos, essa ideia. Então, ele imagina tudo no desenho antes de criar.
Great.
Wow. Okay. Stefan, it's so amazing. I thank you so much for being with me, with us this
It's been
morning.
Lovely to be with you. It was great fun. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. I want to ask you if you have a message for young puppeteers, for artists in general, nowadays during this pandemic, if you have any messages, if you have any last thing you want to say.
Well, I don't think anything that's to do with the pandemic as such. What I think is a basic idea which I would like to broadcast is that if you want to start a artistic career, try not to take what's there, but to reflect and try to find your own way. This is very much, I think, true of puppets. And I'm afraid very often one sees puppets which are imitations of something that exists, be it Muppets, be it whatever. Try to get away from this, try to see all this, take it in, but then find your own way of doing this. I think this is the basic message I would like to give.
Gente, então ele falou que se fosse mandar uma mensagem, ele queria dizer que se você quer ser um artista, que vocês possam criar, descobrir a arte a partir do que está aí, mas refletir, não só copiar. Ele vê muitas vezes as pessoas copiando o que já está aí, que a gente possa refletir sobre o que está aí e criar a nossa própria arte que vem de dentro da gente. Uau! Stefan, I don't think you can see all the comments. I don't know. People were saying, clap. Thank you so much. And congratulations. And so, thank you so much for being here, everyone. I want to say, obrigada, gente. Obrigada a todo mundo por estar aqui. Eu queria dizer que na semana que vem eu vou conversar com a Galia Levi-Kad, que é uma bonequeira de Israel, que faz um teatro de papel super bonito, diferente. Espero que vocês possam estar aqui. Mira, eu vi que você fez uma pergunta, mas eu só consegui ver agora, eu acho que não dá mais tempo. Então, eu queria agradecer todo mundo que fez pergunta e que... Stefan, they're saying we have to have a workshop with you. We can think about the possibility of having a workshop with you. Now that we know we can do it online somehow, I don't know.
Yes, okay.
Então, gente...
Thank
you, Stefan. Thank you so much. Gente, muito obrigada. I think to finish, can you show us the puppets that are behind you one last time and we'll finish with that? What do you think?
Okay.
I think it would be nice. Ó, gente, vamos ver última... Peraí, deixa eu ver essa cena para fechar com esses bonecos aqui, gente, que são muito bonitos. Eu até... you so much. Tchau, gente. Muito obrigada a quem estava aqui. Muitas reflexões. Obrigada.